Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. As always, thank you so much for being here. Tons to discuss today, as in every single live session. Obviously, we have a lot to chat about. So, in today's session, during our downtime, I wanted to focus a little bit on the September hiring surge and what typically occurs, especially starting in September after Labor Day, because historically, September through uh, September through has classically been like maybe the heaviest hiring part of the year. And so, as we're diving into this live session, we'll just focus a little bit on why it is that way. What are some of the reasons why September, as we hit September, especially, why there's such a surge? And potentially some opportunities to take advantage of that surge. So, as you're coming into the live session, as always, let me know you can see me, you can hear me. It's always, we have a global audience, so it's always fun to see where people are visiting from, whether that's just down the street from me here in San Diego or anywhere across the globe. It's always cool to see where people are visiting from. So as you come in, just let me know. Again, you can see and hear me. That's part of the warm and fuzzies of these live sessions. So yeah, any and all comments are welcome. And that's one other thing to remember for my specific live sessions is that this is going to be a more generic Q&A. So we will tackle everything. Okay, Brad, you just gave me the warm and fuzzies. Audio and video are good, and thank you for always being my savior and letting me know. You can see and hear me. Thanks, Jupiter. Hello from Seattle, one of my favorite cities in the world, actually. The only thing I don't know if I could do is the weather, but everything else about Seattle is amazing. So, as always in these live sessions, I like to take a very, very quick step backwards, and then we'll move forwards and we'll dive into the Q&A. And so, yesterday's video was a behavioral example about going above and beyond. And it's just a very common behavioral question that you'll get. And so anytime I create these questions, sometimes I need to, excuse me, remember for myself that I need to make sure that I am following through and actually answering the question. So yesterday, I really tried to focus in on, and if you get that question in an interview, not just what you did to make the project, program, or initiative successful, but what was that extra step or steps you took throughout the process, whether it's the initial conversations, the testing, the execution, the launching, the presenting, the documenting, whatever it might be, how are you going above and beyond throughout? So again, I it gets any question that I plug into Google and I go to the tools section and gets over a billion hits. It's a pretty good indication that there's at least a strong enough likelihood that you might get that question in a job interview to practice it. So again, yesterday's question was, tell me about a time you went above and beyond. And as always, those example answers are pretty robust, but it's just to show the audience what's possible. So we'll just take a moment to prompt on my services, and then we are going to dive right in. Again, any questions, all comments, everything's on the table. And then in our downtime, we'll talk a little bit about why the fall tends to have a huge hiring surge, tends to. Um, if this is your first time here, my name is Jeff H. Sipe. My business is practiceinterviews.com. If you go to practiceinterviews.com, we have a ton of free resources, 100 blog posts. You can join our Slack community of over 4,000 members. On there, you can book a coaching session. I'm still doing one-on-one interview, one-on-one negotiation, and one-on-one strategy sessions. That's resume, LinkedIn review. What else? The course. So 20% off the course today if you use the coupon code SHS. And that will also get you 20% off of our AI tool. AI tool's getting great feedback. We now have introduced, it's now been maybe 3 or 4 weeks with modular feedback, breaking up like your star answer into the situation, task, actions, results. It's at a price point that I think is pretty reasonable. And so, but if you use that 20% coupon code, you can get that 20% off today, the AI tool, and we'll continue to develop and grow that tool. Obviously, as a SaaS product, we're gonna have to put a lot into development and continuing to develop that. That's it. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button, and if you've never subscribed, please consider subscribing. Let's kinda dive in and here to here to work through anything you guys want. Thanks. Hello from Chicago. Okay, I've only been to Chicago once, but had one amazing night there, a very, very long time ago and need to get back to it. Yeah, on the weather probably, yeah. Awesome. Hello from San Jose. I can hear you well and looking forward to today's topic, how to leverage hiring surge month. Thank you. Lived in San Jose for 5 years. Absolutely loved it. Hi from Warsaw. This is fun. I mean, I know that this is we're just getting warmed up, but Warsaw was actually I did some extensive travel in Europe, and Warsaw was on my list, and I didn't make it, and so I need to get back for sure. Hey, Liz, always good to hear and see you from Sarasota. All right, Rajneesh. Okay. I've given all 3 rounds in Google. Last GNL round was average only. But after 2 rounds, I had an informal round with the director. What are the chances that my last round can affect my result? So, I always kind of go into the same pitch, which is the interviews are important, right? And without being able to see the feedback, I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that the feedback's collective. And that's not every company, but in most companies, they're collectively looking at all the feedback and saying, "Should we hire this person? Should we not hire this person?" And so if they were already pushing you into an informal chat with the director after 2 interviews, usually that's a good sign. And sometimes interviews don't go perfect and they move forward. Sometimes they'll give you another chance if they still liked everything else. But percentages and all that stuff. First of all, if I had access to the data, I still couldn't tell you because I don't know for that role if you'll go to HC. For most roles, you will, and then HC is a total wild card. I sat in over 200 HCs and saw lots of different things in those committees, depending on the person, the mood, everything. Those things can flex quite a bit. Just something to note. And again, I've obviously been gone from Google a long time, but um, I really kind of saw everything candidates I didn't necessarily think would get through, and then candidates who I thought were a slam dunk and not get through. Now, the slam dunks typically go more through more often, of course, and a slam dunk is just somebody who has really strong feedback across the board. Okay, so we're really early on. I can see we have a pretty decent audience to start. So again, any questions, comments, everything's on the table. And again, as these comments come in, I'm going to get to them as quickly as possible, and then we'll talk about the September hiring search. So, Jeff, do you have any insights on what happens internally during G's hiring committee stage? How long does it take? Yep. So again, we can flash back to 2 seconds ago. Yeah, I sat in about 200 of them, but I have I can give you just the high level of what hiring committee looks like, and then I definitely did some videos on hiring committee that you can also check out. But the way hiring committee works is it's just a group of your peers, people who are in like or similar roles. They did not interview you. The whole goal of hiring committee is that you have a different perspective on your interviews. And so they'll collectively review your interview feedback, your resume, and a statement of support from the hiring manager. And they'll get together to discuss that case. And then they'll decide whether they want to move forward or not. If you're going to HC and your recruiter has not told you the day and the exact time and when you'll hear back from them after hiring committee, it's poor communication on their end. Every candidate should know the day they're going to hiring committee, the time, and when they'll hear back. If you don't have those details, but you're going to hiring committee, you should. Once hiring committee is over, I can give you that result immediately. I don't even need to sit through all of hiring committee. If you're the first candidate reviewed, I'll jump out of hiring committee if I only have one candidate in there, and I'll call you immediately. And that's really what it should be. You should know the day, the time, and you should get a phone call immediately after whenever they're ready. And I don't know why that process isn't followed 100% of the time. Hey, Jeff, while answering questions specifically technical, how much time should I take to answer? Should we continue till they ask to stop or just stop? Basically, how much depth we need to answer. So with a technical question, And again, I always give advice falling back on the idea and concept that it's advice and it's definitely my lens in my opinion, but with a technical question, I still like CFAS. So if like a very, very common question asked at Google, a technical question is, "How does Netflix work in the cloud?" And it's like, well, that could go in so many different areas. How does Netflix work in the cloud from a straight technical perspective, from a user perspective, from a load balancing and caching perspective? So we can definitely come in and clarify. Then when I answer a technical question, I'm gonna break it into smaller pieces. I'm gonna handle load balancing, caching, etcetera. And so I'm gonna chop through those pieces. That's my framework. And I'm gonna make some assumptions, and then I'm gonna solve, and I'm gonna break those solutions into small pieces. So I think what I see, the biggest challenge with technical questions is, one, candidates tend to just answer from their lens. They think there's a certain technical perspective, but they don't ask. And then they try and solve for all parts of that technical equation, whatever it may be. And it's like, well, that's really difficult. We want to make sure that we're tackling the pieces, the technical components that our interviewer cares the most about. So we'll tackle one item and then we'll check it and we'll say, "Hey, Sue, we tackled that. I think we should move on to X next. What do you think?" And then we're making it interactive, and then you're not going too long because you're breaking up your answer. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have more questions. Hey, Jeff, last week you talked about the many layoffs and challenging market. Do you still think we should negotiate aggressively at Google given the context? Thank you. 100%. If anybody is watching this right now and you are negotiating with a company that has historically negotiated with you, don't stop doing it. So whether it's Google or Meta or Apple or whatever these, any of the FANG companies or big tech companies, get after it. And I think that people are backing off. They're, like, concerned. Google's not gonna rescind your offer. Be gracious and kind. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and my expectations for year 1 are X, and then you have to get after it. Google has not rescinded a single offer based on somebody who's gracious and kind and goes bold that I have seen, and it's probably, like, it's definitely over 500. It might be 600, 700 offers I've negotiated with Google. I mean, the number is insane. And so, I've never seen it. I would say get after it, and anybody who's telling you to have fear when negotiating with Google at this stage, I would just say, I just have way too much data to say that that's not factual. So definitely get after it. And equity always is the best to go. Okay, hold on, and we'll actually get to the second point. I struggle with some of the specific points in your past videos, such as anchoring really high and asking for who the decision maker is. Um, so the decision maker, you'd ask for the decision maker if you didn't know. So meaning like, well, we know because that information is extremely public, and I can just tell you the decision maker is the compensation team. They're the ones who make the decision. At some other companies, we don't know who the decision maker is. At a startup, it could be the individual hiring manager, it could be the CEO, it could be a different team, or it could be a team driven decision. We don't know. So you ask for the decision maker when you don't know, but at the big tech companies or big companies in general, they're going to have some sort of compensation team that's going to do that review. And so, but anchoring high is just about it's about the psychology of it. So much of my coaching is science and psychology, and so this amazing study came out of Harvard, which basically confirmed that 100% of the time we're unable to remove an anchor, meaning when we set that number, our audience gets attached to that number and they can't remove it. That's a benefit for us. So we go 20 to 30% over what we want to get so that we've set the stage. But again, with anchoring, you need to be careful. You need to understand the company. And I can just tell you that a company like Google anchoring high is not going to lose you the job. It could be another company. So you just have to understand and do your research, go on Reddit, go on Team Blind, and come chat with me, and I can tell you those companies that may or may not be, and if we don't know, we just say, "Hey, what's your overall negotiation philosophy?" Especially if it's a smaller company, because some smaller companies say, "We don't negotiate at all," but if you don't ask, then you try and negotiate, they can rescind. It's I know it's tricky, but I'm here to help. Let me know if you have additional questions, please. Hey, Jeff, like your situation, like your suggestion on this situation. All right, so I'm gonna scroll down. I'll get back to the comments I'm skipping over. I had 2 rounds of interviews for a sales architect role, one-on-one with principal architect, and then panel Q&A. Then they sent a lab exercise, okay, and the lab is exhaustive and focused on network security, which is not my strong suit. I told the recruiter the same. It's taking me a long time, and I've already asked them to reschedule once. Okay. I no longer feel I'm a good fit, plus HM spoken to me one-on-one, and they're not clearing all steps. I worry that they're stringing me. Should I just bail out or complete the lab? Complete the lab. Just complete it. Do your best, complete it, but I want you to reiterate to your recruiter that, like, "Hey, this is, again, not my strong suit. That's something I mentioned. It took me a really long time, but I'm still intrigued and interested. Just complete it because it could open up other doors. It could do other things. You do wanna complete it. Do your best, please, and then keep us posted. Come back next week and let us know how it goes. But, yeah, I definitely wanna see you complete that for sure." Love your videos, Jeff. Thanks so much, Joshua. I really appreciate the positive feedback always. Jeff, I followed your behavioral interview advice and matched with a team at Google. Currently in the HC phase. Thank you so much. My chances of an offer for the first sweet role in Pittsburgh. I don't know, but all I can say is I wish you the best of luck, and I will say, if anybody does get the role and you wanna give me a shout out on LinkedIn, those really, really help my business, and I have never really asked for that in the 6 years, but I will start throwing that out there. Those LinkedIn posts are really valuable for my business. They just get a lot of visibility to people who don't really know me. Um, but Sweet, Pittsburgh, there's definitely a need in that market, and the thing I love about getting hired in the Pittsburgh market is your comp obviously won't be as high as, like, New York or the Bay, but comparable in the Pittsburgh market, it's gonna be really, really strong. Um, yeah, good luck. Come back and let us know how it goes, um, and yeah, love to see you get that job. Got lost here for a second. Oh, there it is. Hey, Jeff, thank you for your rich guidance through the YouTube presentations. You have a CE RRK ALML first interview this Friday. Suggest any do's and don'ts or any key things not to miss. Well, the RRK interview, historically for CE has had 3 categories, and if your recruiter didn't tell you this, behavioral, hypothetical, and technical. And yeah, I think the biggest thing I always recommend would go back to the earlier comments I was making about technical questions. Again, how does Netflix work in the cloud? Very common CE question. How are you gonna tackle that question, right? And so using CFAST for technical questions, especially for CE, is really important. Connect with your audience. Remember, CEs are strong communicators, and so you're likely going to be interviewing other CEs, and so it's a really nice balance of having technical skills and communication skills, so just make sure you're making those interviews interactive and bringing them in, and then if you get a hypothetical question, just solve what you're solving in the role of a CE, and then, of course, most CEs are gonna have great examples, and almost pretty much every CE has a foundational cloud knowledge. It may not be GCP, but at least cloud knowledge. Good luck. Let me know if you have more questions. Hey, Jeff, love your videos. I just finished my first round of interview with the recruiter. What's the average time to get back to you with a result in the next round? So it's not I mean, I guess technically, right, it is a result. Like, the result is, yes, we're moving forward or no, we're not moving forward. Um, they should let you know within 5 business days, and if you haven't heard back in 5 business days, my default mode is we always follow up after 5 business days. Graciousness and kindness. Hope you're doing great. Just wanted to check in on the status of my application, the status of the interviews, and leave it really short and concise. and good luck. Let us know. Thanks, Jeff. Any advice for project management interview? So I actually answered this on YouTube this morning on the YouTube comment. Project and program management, like I would just go and start with the fundamentals, right? Budget, timeline, scope, scale, resources, risk, requirements, stakeholders, shared vision, all those things that are foundational items within the project management and program management space. You gotta lead without authority. So you've gotta really think about not only how are you getting all the requirements right and the timeline right and the scope and resources right, but how are you collaborating with the teams to get the work done? Because that's what project and program management are all about. And then just when you get questions, be thinking about examples where times where projects went over budget or over time, you're definitely gonna get those questions, and then how do you handle a project that has changing requirements, or the scope has gotten bigger, or the risk has increased? Be ready for all those types of questions. I know that's pretty broad, but I hope it helps. How is the comp for recruiters structured? Is there a commission per hire like a salesperson? Well, so the answer is it depends. If you're a corporate recruiter, then you're gonna get a base, you're gonna get a base and a bonus, you're gonna get a base bonus and equity. It really just depends on the company. Now, if you're an external, like an agency recruiter, there's a commission for every single hire. So really low base salary, well, not really low, but low base salary typically, and then you're gonna get a percentage of every deal, whether that's hiring contractors, which will give you a weekly payout, or hiring a full-time person, which is usually a percentage of the first year's base salary. So somebody gets paid 100K, I'm the recruiter, I find the candidate, it's a 20% fee, 10% goes back to the agency, 5%, 5K goes to the person who has the client relationship, you the account manager, and then 5K to me as the recruiter. So really basic example, but the big thing to understand is corporate recruiters, they're not incentivized to hold back money. Really not seen that at all. I'm sure there's a use case for it, but corporate recruiters, their goal is it's a check mark. You're a hire. They have a target of 3 per quarter, 5 per quarter, 10 per quarter, and they need to fill those numbers. And so usually corporate recruiters aren't trying to hold back money from you. It's a good thing to know because they typically should be your partner and advocate. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have follow-up questions. Okay. We're getting back to the topic at hand, which again, we don't need to do that. This is just a live Q&A session to help everybody, but what strategy should I focus in on this month during the hiring surge to increase my chances of landing a job? So many people have been in these live sessions before, and I would just say we've moved to a time where the easy apply or just applying has gotten easy, right? And that is challenging because maybe 5 years ago, even just 5 years ago, like, maybe you were competing against 300 applicants, but now it's 3,000 applicants. And so, during a hiring surge, you stand out by networking, and it's not easy, and people don't wanna do it, and they don't like doing it, but work your warm network to start and just constantly be reaching out to people and constantly be giving people value. And if you are gonna ask somebody for something, you better give them everything up front. So if you're gonna ask somebody to get you an interview, better give them your availability, your resume, your email, your phone number, everything that they would need to move forward. Because creating any back and forth, if you're gonna ask for something, is gonna be an instant stopping point. So, but I like networking and I like a give first model. We go on LinkedIn, we find a second connection who we think is maybe a hiring manager, we share an article or video with them that's relevant to them, that's recent. It's a great way to build connections, and then events, especially, like, community service is a great way to go out into your community, meet people. Why do I love community service events? Because if nothing happens, you're still giving back to your community, and secondarily, people who tend to go to community service events tend to be people who are givers. And so if you get in conversations, they might find out you're looking for a job while you're canning boxes of cans, right, at a food bank, for example, and they may be able to help you. So just get out in your community, talk to people. Uh, everything if we do everything behind a computer, it's not gonna go great. It's a good reminder for me in my business as well. "Hey, Jeff, I'm from India, and I wanna apply for jobs like the US, UK, Australia. How do I do that? How do I search for companies which hire people from other countries?" Well, um, you can Google it, right? You can, definitely use ChatGPT, it will tell you. Big companies are going to sponsor candidates from outside of their country. And it is a tougher path, right? If anybody's saying, "Hey, it's totally easy, you can be from any country, Google has sponsorship, and they're just gonna sponsor anybody," well, that's not the case. They legally need to see if they can find somebody who's local first. And so, what I actually recommend is for anybody who really wants to ultimately get sponsorship and move to another country, the best way is to get a job in your home country, especially with a big company, and then try and transfer to another location. That is the path of least resistance, and if you are just applying to roles outside of your country, it's pretty much not gonna happen. So there's gotta be some sort of warm connection that's gonna get you in there. Companies do sponsor, but it's really, really tricky and challenging, and I don't wanna discourage you because I think anything is possible. That's kind of my motto, but, um, it's gonna be tougher, and if you can get a job in your home country and then transfer from there, that's typically the easiest path, in my opinion. Okay, Liz, let's go here. I'm very excited to share that I have a technical interview scheduled for a UX dev role. Amazing. A recruiter wanted to schedule me for next week, although I'm practicing coding, and this is going well, but I don't feel ready. Should I push back about 2 weeks? Will ask about putting anything at risk, but worry about stalling process. I'm a front runner and previous interviewer seemed keen. Okay, um, so I wanna keep oh, sorry, that didn't hit. So I wanna keep up the momentum. Okay, so what Liz is referencing is when we want a little more time, and sometimes we need time. Momentum is important, and we wanna keep up that momentum, but sometimes we're not ready. And, yeah, you wanna plan to be ready, of course, but sometimes we're just not ready. So, if you're not ready, we ask the recruiter, "Hey, I just wanna understand, if I were to push out this interview a week, am I putting anything at risk? Like, do you have a pretty active pipeline? I just want your opinion." Because sometimes they don't have anybody else, and you could really use that extra time, and sometimes they're gonna say, "We got lots of candidates in process. We should interview now." In 0% of cases, I can't say again, I always think there's a random use case, but there's no benefit to the recruiter to not be honest with you, right? Like, why wouldn't they be? They're trying to find, the hire and get that person to offer accept, and so if they're not transparent with you, they're not helping their own case. They're not doing what's best for them. But yeah, Liz, I would just touch base, get a feel, and go from there if you need a little bit more time, but if you're going back and doing some of the coding stuff, that obviously could take some time, no matter how much time you have. Let me know if you have more questions. Hey, Kyle. Hey, Jeff. Been at G for a year as an ICL5 engineer. Thanks to your videos. Amazing. My boss, oops, my boss wants to reorg the team and have me manage 2 to 3 people. Nothing formal, but there's been no talk of comp. Should I expect an increase? Is this a promotion? Should I ask or negotiate for more? Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Um, Typically, no. No, things will not really change if you get direct reports at your level. So, but remember, you're not supposed to be the expert. So, it's not a promotion. It's definitely not a promotion, but it's an opportunity. And I know, like, oh, Jeff, opportunity, but it is because to move from a 5 to a 6, if you show strong leadership and managerial skills, it will move you to the 6 faster. And especially when we talk about these roles at Google, like, to move from an L5 to an L6 as an IC is getting harder and harder. But with the management piece, it becomes easier. But you always ask and say, "Hey, I just wanna understand, like, I don't know, I've only been here a year, like, how does it work with your manager? Like, is there a compensation increase when you move to management? Like, what do you think from a promotion path?" Just have a really candid dialogue with them. Um, your boss clearly likes you, clearly sees your potential. Have a really open conversation with them. "I wanna learn a little bit more. How do I get to that next level if this isn't a promotion?" Which it's not. But just talk through it with them. This is a really good place to be because we're gonna see less hires at the L3 and L4 SWE level, and if you have those leadership capabilities and like them, then it's gonna do wonders for your career, and let me just put in my 2 cents. The best managers I had throughout my career, and by the way, I guess I'll just introduce this. I had a boss nightmare last night because my biggest fear is having to go work for somebody else again, but the side note, but the best bosses treat their employees like a person first and an employee second. So, Kyle, if I was going to give you any advice as you're starting to manage these people, worry about them as a person, then think about them as an employee. You will be the best manager they've ever had, or you'll be one of the best, and they'll like you more, they'll give you good feedback, you'll get a larger team, but just, like, people have stuff going on that's just so much bigger and more important than work, and so we gotta treat them like a person, make sure just everything in their life is okay, and then we can move on to managing them for the job. Again, just my 2 cents. Okay. We are at the 30s. So at the 30s, I take like a at the 30s, I take a 30-second break to prompt on my services. So let's do that really quickly. If you use the coupon code SHS, 20% off of our AI tool and the interview mastery course today. I do one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions. That's resume and LinkedIn review. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday, new original content every Monday. I did not do any shorts last week. I definitely need to do some this week. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. And if you've never subscribed, consider subscribing. And then I am also going to turn on a fan. It's been incredibly hot in San Diego, and my office AC is not working great at the moment, so I'm gonna step away for 3 seconds and just turn that fan on. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. It's always weird to step away, but it's 82 degrees in this office and just getting hotter by the second, and that's why I don't have natural light because it is so hot. Okay, so here we go. Pre-interview question. With AI tools so readily available these days, do you recommend using these tools to tweak your resume for each position? Yes and no. Absolutely. Do I think tools like JobScan, for example, where they're gonna take your resume, take your LinkedIn profile, do the scanning, they're good. And you can use GPT too. So you can throw your resume and job description into GPT and say, "Hey, can you craft my resume to fit this job?" Now, I don't love redoing the whole resume. I love redoing the summary section. So the top of your resume should have a bulleted summary, and those bullets should be very specific skills that align with the job description. So if you just change out that bulleted summary and use ChatGPT each time, you can change your resume in about 3 minutes. And that's what I typically recommend to people, but some of those tools are really good and will help. Yeah. Let me know if you have more questions. For anyone prepping for G For anyone prepping, G is transparent about their interviews. A lot of documentation and mock interviews available. My recruiter told me one thing that people miss is reading their materials. Yeah, Google has a lot of materials. By the way, like, if you wanna interview with any of these big tech companies, I mean, the amount of information available out there is unbelievable, and Google provides as many, if not more, resources than any company to help you have success, so absolutely take advantage of all those resources. Um, I'm gonna do a short on this, and I wanted to do it last week, but I'll do it this week. The one item I do want you to totally ignore when doing research is not like Google's individual stuff, which is great. Check out their YouTube channel, Life at Google is really awesome. But if you go to their careers.google.com, for example, like they got a ton of resources there as well. Um, any video that says most common questions asked at Google, most common questions asked at Meta or Apple, that is fake news. There are no most common questions asked. The questions are constantly changing. The only company I know that's kept their questions the same for a long time is Amazon. All these other companies are changing their questions. The questions are typically role specific. Those videos, they're clickbait, and they're incorrect, and they're giving you false information, and they're always, always, always done by somebody who never worked at those companies. Just an FYI. I think it's an important data point. I definitely wanna do a short on it. Hey, Daphne. Thanks for being here. You should have an update for us today, I think. I think you should have an update. Let us know. Hey, Donald. Any guidance for entrepreneurs transition back to corporate America in this current climate? All right, what's the real answer, and then what's the answer you wanna hear? The real answer is don't do it, but no, I mean, I think the thing about being an entrepreneur that, people just don't see the work, and I think that that's the hardest part, and I can tell you COVID was amazing for my business, and then after COVID, it got a lot tougher, and I'm spending a lot of money on the AI tool to try and get that up and running and get people like you to use it. Um, but the biggest piece of guidance, if you do decide to transition back into corporate, is highlighting like that nice mix of what you probably learned in corporate, then you probably went out on your own, and now that you're going back to corporate. And I think the terminology that I really like is, well, why would you stop being an entrepreneur to do this? I want to be part of something larger. I want to be part of something that has a bigger scope and scale. I want to be working within more of a team. So you use lots of positive buzzwords, and you say that I'm really fortunate to have been an entrepreneur because I think it will not only make me a better employee, but it helped me have a better understanding of the big picture of how to tie my goals to the bigger business objectives. So it's like positive, 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 and you can throw this question to GPT and it probably give you a much better answer than me. Those are some of the items to consider. Now, I don't think that the current climate's gonna really change those things. I think the current climate is just it is what it is, so I think tackling it with positivity, and then, of course, lastly, if you have a network, utilizing that warm network is gonna be critical. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have more questions. Jupiter, okay. Pre-interview question. Oh, okay. Yeah, we answered that one. How do data centers differ from regular Google offices? In the process of interviewing for a data center, and not sure if this is the right move, if it differs a lot from a regular office. So data center is gonna have some office space in it, and, like, obviously, if you work at, like, some of the best companies, they might have some other facilities, some food on site, all that stuff. Just gonna be more secure than a regular office. You're gonna have to go through more checks and balances to get in. It's smaller, so it's gonna be a smaller environment, but it just depends. Like, if this is a great opportunity for you, I mean, I always default back to the same rules. If you wanna work at Google or any of these big tech companies, look, the value of the brand is priceless. You may not love your job, you may not be happy there, you don't need to stay forever. 6 months of that brand is gonna help you beat out a ton of competition moving forward for other jobs, and they pay well. So, I wouldn't think that that would be a huge deterrent, but if you're extremely extroverted and you need to chat with a ton of people every day, it's gonna be a smaller office environment within the data center. Mr. Mediocre's asked about applying from India to US, UK, etcetera. Might Dublin be viable? I have a friend from Argentina that went from Google Dublin. Are there others? Hope this is well. Um, well, Dublin's a very friendly city in terms of your ability to move there, get there. I know Dublin's one of the more flexible environments. I love the Dublin offices. I always talk about them being like the biggest melting pot. You have people from all over the world working in Dublin, and I just always thought Dublin would probably be one of the coolest offices to work in. Um, but yeah, in terms of all I'll say is in terms of sponsorship, I just want you to do your due diligence and just understand it's tough. If anybody's just like, "Oh, well, you can just do it." No, I mean, it's tough, but tough does not mean you shouldn't do it, right? Anything that's tough is worth working for, but it's just something to keep in mind that the amount of applications to get into these offices for the number of roles, they will prioritize local and easier sponsorship paths as opposed to more difficult sponsorship paths. That's all it is. But thanks for this. This context is helpful. Without interview schedule, how can I best prepare for a potential one? I tend to use the lack of a date as an excuse not to practice, but I know I should be ready anytime. Any tips? Fantastic question. This is the hardest part. If you are open to work, what I would recommend, if you're open to work and not working, I mean, there's 2 people, they're open to work and you're working, or you're open to work and you're not working, but set a plan. Set a schedule to just get a little bit of interview prep in each day. Are we gonna do it on the weekends? Hey, maybe not. Hey, if we have a full-time job, maybe we will, but just an hour here or there, like, just start getting into the flow. Obviously, that's why I think utilizing my AI tool is really helpful because it gives you a little bit of that prep to get focused, because what happens when we get an interview? It happens quickly, and then all of a sudden, we're scrambling, we've procrastinated, eh, but it is hard. I just wanna recognize that practicing your interview skills when you don't have an interview is difficult, and it will set you up for massive success when that interview does land, because you have less stress and anxiety of trying to get everything right. You've been working to get things right, but you haven't been overwhelming yourself. It's also not, if you're open to work and actually looking for a job where you're practicing for 8 hours a day, that would be crazy, right? But build it in. Build it into your plan. It's like, similar to going to the gym or working out in general, right? You go a few times a week, and same thing with the prep. Just do it a few times a week, then you'll get that momentum and you'll feel more comfortable and prepared when the interviews come. But, like, hey, does everybody procrastinate when it comes to this stuff? Pretty much, yeah. Hey, Jeff, what is better when switching to FTE? Is it better to wait for the role you want while you're a temp TVC at the organization, or is it better to get your foot in the door and take any role as an FTE and transfer the role you want? All right, let's get this context. Perfect. Context, a very, very valuable item. Okay. I'm a TVC at Google who works with the DevOps team as a tester, launch next features, onboard new markets. I'm looking to become a SWE at Google. However, there is a FTE PM role open on my team. It's not the role I want, but it's an FTE. Yeah, so I'm gonna strongly recommend, trying to get that role as an FTE. It does open doors, it locks you in a little bit more, it makes things a little bit safer. I mean, if you absolutely hate that work, no. Good manager, though? Do you like your manager? Do you like your lead? Do you like your team? Because if you like the people, especially leadership, then I'm gonna say yes. If you're not happy with leadership, then maybe not, because you don't wanna stay and maybe working for somebody who you don't like. But if you really like them and this position is an opportunity for you, it's at least worth considering. At least if they're willing to explore you for that opportunity, go through the process. You don't have to say yes, right? But maybe you learn a little bit more about the role, maybe you like it more, and then maybe you transfer to a sweet role in the future. Um, it is all Obviously, your choice and your choice only, but I hope some of that feedback helps. Could you expand on the difference between level 5 and 6? What things do you need to exhibit to be considered for a 6? Recruiter interview performance will be determined the level. I like to take control of this situation. So any company that's going to have levels is going to be a big company. Lots of times recruiters don't want to commit to the level because they don't know how you're going to perform. I like to put it in front of them and offer them options. It appears like this job is going to be L5, L6 level. Can you just confirm that that's the range? Whether they confirm or don't confirm, I would say I'd like to be interviewed at the L6 level because at any of these big companies, we don't want L5s and interviewing us if we're targeting an L6 because we don't want people at a more junior level interviewing us. We want people at that level or above. So you really kind of push and take control with your recruiter, asking them and telling them what you believe the range is, and then telling them the level that you want to interview for. Whether all that stuff actually works out, we don't know, but it's Liz, it's definitely your ability to take control. Hey Jeff, I'm a data engineer, business intelligence developer in Chicago that was laid off in on 5/28. Okay, sorry to hear that. Had some activity in the last 3 months, but September is slowed down by a lot. Should I take a break from looking for a while? No, and again, this is the ramp. Like, September is usually the ramp. So let's just take a moment to we haven't really talked about why. Why is there a September hiring surge typically and historically? Because most businesses work on a calendar and fiscal year. So their fiscal year is the same as the calendar year. Not all. Like, tech companies like Microsoft, for example, their fiscal year is like June to July, or sorry, July to July, or however we wanna work that out. So theirs is different, but most companies' fiscal and calendar year are the same. So it's kinda like a use it or lose it model. Like, if you don't use that headcount you have, you're gonna lose it in December, or you're gonna lose it January 1st. So they're pushing to hire the roles that they have openings for, and that's typically why September, October, and November are the heaviest hiring months, even lingering into early December, and then obviously the last 2 to 3 weeks of December, things really slow down. Keep going. This is like the life mantra, right? Um, and I mean, again, I think I share some personal details on these live sessions, but it's hard to always keep going. It's hard to wake up every day and get after it, especially when it's been lack of responses, lots of work, you don't hear back from anybody, you just need one. So keep going, do not stop, and if anything, do more. I know that that's really hard to say, but this is the time. This is the time to push, and even if you're not kinda seeing it and feeling it, trust me, it's there. The jobs will be there, and you just gotta push, 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 and it's a lot about discipline and follow through and just sticking to it, and trust me, I know it's hard to show up every day and do it every day. I got interviewed, at Google in 2022. They took 4 rounds, then they gaslighted me for 6 months. My interviews went well, but the result was opposite of my expectation, with the recruiter leaving his role and the lead recruiter reaching out to me with an apology. Does it happen in Google sometimes? It happens everywhere, and it happens surprisingly more at Google than you would think. Why? The checks and balances aren't in place. They haven't built in the appropriate checks and balances. I don't think that the training's good enough, and recruiter roles, I think the piece that people don't really think about is recruiters tend to be more junior, tend to be, not always, but they tend to be earlier in their career where skills like organization and prioritization, they're just working on them. They're building up on those. And what I really have seen from Google and like all these big tech companies is they don't have good transition plans in place. When somebody gets part of a layoff, gets laid off, moves, they don't have a good way to say, okay, we are going to sit and we have this exact action plan for how to transition all your candidates, message all your candidates. Like, I still haven't seen that simplistic process put in place, and I think that's probably why it happened, and if anybody's been in these live sessions, I don't defend recruiters. I think that they could do a way better job, and I can tell you walking out the door at Google, I came up with a transition plan for every one of my candidates in process, and I don't know what happened to those candidates because my lead never met with me to, like, actually go and transition and make sure that each person had been passed on, like, so that process was not in place, and I haven't seen it in place. I'm sorry you had that experience, but obviously, if you went through the whole interview process in 2022, they have some good data. I would keep trying and, see what happens, but let me know if you have more questions. That was a little bit of a tirade. I hope it helped, though. Quick FYI, your mic is cutting in and out a little bit. Okay. How about now? Let me know if that's still an issue, because I really don't want that to be an issue. And always, if you guys see any hiccups with my lighting, my mic, please let me know. I'm just seeing my mic has lights on it. That's why I'm looking at it this way, and it appears to be lighting up okay. But please let me know. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And again, sorry for this terrible lighting. It's really hot in San Diego. I moved offices, and the new window is huge, and it gets to be really hot in here really quickly, and, I don't think anybody wants to see me sweating during this live session, so sorry for the bad lighting today. I had my interview for an L5 product manager. I thought the interview did not go well, was scheduled for 4 more interviews. Does that mean the first round went well, or are they just customarily or, like, it's customary to finish all rounds? Um, Depends. I mean, but most of the time, like, ever since COVID, just like ever since COVID, things changed. It it kinda benefited both parties, in my opinion. It benefited corporations to be more flexible and not have to schedule everything the same day and get it all done in one day, even if the candidate wasn't great. You could do it in chunks and see if they wanted to move on. So that's one piece of it. And then for candidates, I think it's just easier to interview from home. We can be business on top, casual on bottom. We don't have to commute there. We don't have the stress of getting in the office. I think energetically we lose a little bit. But yeah, I'm losing my thought here, but you got to get after it. And I just got to give the advice on the product manager interviews. Um, Execution. Product managers have great ideas, but the ideas aren't great if you don't execute on them. So if you come up with great ideas, support them with how you'd execute on them. That is the best piece of advice I could give to any product manager interviewing anywhere. Could you talk a little bit about leveling between Google and Amazon? What should the equivalent L5 and Amazon be at Google? L4. Yeah, they're not apples for apples. Um, Specifically, the 2 companies that, like, have better alignment, on leveling tend to be, Meta and Amazon in comparison to Google. It's always a level down. So that remains to be true today. So if you're an L5 at Amazon, I would expect an L4 at Google, and it will pay. That L4 role at Google will pay you for sure. But that's what I would expect. Please let me know if you have more questions on that. Thanks for being here. Okay, answered that one. Hey Jeff, thanks for everything you're doing. You're the best resource for interview practice, even recommended by Google Recruitment. Thank you. It's still so funny. That just trips me out, that Google recruiters recommend my content. And it's funny because, again, I mean, I've been gone for a long time. I mean, I have a little bit of a pulse. I have people inside of Google telling me little nuanced things, nothing confidential, of course. But, um, it was just weird when I started my YouTube channel, and I will still speak to this. I think I'm really a generic coach. I don't look at myself as a Google coach. I've done Google content because it was crazy in 2018, 19, 20. There was nobody doing that on YouTube, and I just couldn't believe it. So obviously, I wanted to share some of the information. But it's always fun when recruiters still recommend me some of the Google content. I still like to do Google content. You'll see I'll do one Google video every 2 to 3 months. But I think so much of interviewing especially is foundational, right? It's and anybody who's here, there's really only one word you need to think about when you're answering any interview questions. It's how. On the behavioral side, how have you done it in the past? And then on the hypothetical side, how would you do it in my role? If you're really good at the how, that's everything. And so, just my strong recommendation. Yeah. Thanks for that. Great question. To a degree, that's what happened to me. Prioritized app development launch until interview scheduled, then caught scrambling. Stress does not help. Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, it's not the you're not, it unfortunately happens too much. Thanks so much, Jeff. This is exactly what I needed to hear to keep me motivated. Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Super helpful. Thanks so much. Come back. Please let us know what's going on. But I always think about yes. I think about the company because the company will directly tie to comp. So I want that killer brand because that brand is gonna pay me in perpetuity. And then I'm thinking about the comp because I gotta take care of my family, I gotta take care of myself, I gotta take care of my aging parents, whatever it might be, my dog. Um, and then, those 2 things are important, but the most important piece that I'm looking for is, do I like my lead and manager? Do they treat me like a human first, employee second? And if I have a good lead, I'm gonna take a job that maybe is a little less exciting because a good lead is gonna help me develop my career and push me into the role I actually want. And so I would get totally fixated on your lead and then do you like the team as well? Those would be my biggest priorities because obviously becoming an FTE is gonna give you the benefits and it's gonna protect you a little bit more. Just took your advice and sent an email with a prior interview feedback resume and cell requesting Google source where I've been in touch with to connect for a CE role I like. Thanks, Jeff. Amazing. Amazing. Keep at it. Is becoming a people manager worth it? For some, it's what progression looks like. This is a fantastic question. So what happens in corporate? Anywhere in corporate globally, what happens? Well, what happens is you're a successful individual contributor, and then the logical next step is leadership. Well, is it logical? Not really. Not everybody should move into people management. Some people are just better ICs, and people management is hard. People are people. They're unpredictable. We all know humans. And so, I mean, I remember in my time at Google, I was pushing and pushing and pushing to go from an IC to a lead and just like hiccup after hiccup, it just didn't work out. And now reflecting back, I started to think, well, I knew like treating employees like a human first or a person before an employee was important, but now I'm not so sure that I would have been the best lead. I think I would have been quick to just not deal with maybe some of the tougher stuff. So I think you just have to understand that it's okay to stay the IC route, even if they want to push you into leadership. It's such a personal preference. And if you are going to be a leader, I would definitely recommend like doing the research, learning the skills, working with people in the company to learn what works best from a leadership perspective, because it's definitely a different type of role. What are your thoughts on the hiring outlook for the rest of this year, particularly for MBA folks? Will there be an interest rate cut? Bring in some hopeful news. Yeah, I think we'll see a little bit of interest rate cuts. I think that's what the news is saying. Definitely not my expertise. Now for MBA folks, I mean, this is a slightly challenging piece of feedback. There's tons of value in getting an MBA, right? Because to me, the most interesting is the use cases and then working with others through challenging situations. But MBAs in general, like they don't carry the weight that they carried 20 years ago. But a big thing you wanna use if you have an MBA is use that network, the people you went to school with. That's where you can take advantage of it. The hiring outlook for the rest of the year, I think, is still gonna be slower than previous years, but, fall, it tends to be good. Jobs reports look pretty decent. Tech seems to be hiring. So I think that's all good news, but obviously it's a little bit of a wait and see. Okay. I'm gonna pass over the update at the 30s based on what we have left here, and I'm just gonna crank through some of these questions. Um, oh, sorry, I just clicked on that one. When you resign, how much info should you give the new position? I think the question is when you resign, how much info do you give on your new position? As much as you feel comfortable or none. You are not required to tell them anything, right? And if they extend a counter at that time, no thank you. Really just want a good transition plan, but it's up to you whether you tell them or not. It's really a personal decision. Free sponsorships, any advice for 2024 STEM, OT, OPT, MBAs? We feel many companies don't understand we can start working right away, and checking the sponsorship in the future box disqualifies us. Um, well, I can't speak to whether people understand the STEM OPT or not. They should, and they should know that that allows you to work right away. But yes, I would absolutely agree that checking the sponsorship in the future box could disqualify you. It's tricky. Um, I feel like what I tried to do, especially in my time at Google, because it was the first company I had really worked at that did do sponsorships, was to educate myself and understand the types of sponsorships, how they worked, and so that when I was working with candidates, I could say, "Oh, yeah, it's this, and it's gonna take this amount of time." So, part of that's just an education for people. But yes, I would say, are people educated about sponsorships? Not really. I have ADHD. Would you recommend disclosing this as a disability when applying in the application form? Does it make any difference getting an interview call, and how do recruiters use this info? I don't think it's gonna make a difference. Again, I just wanna be as transparent, and my goal is to help. I don't think it'll make a difference to add it, so I wouldn't. But again, it's such a personal decision. Will it get you more interviews? I do not believe it will. Could it work against you? I think it could. Again, I can't say for sure, just my 2 cents. And then responsorships follow-up. Will Google fairly negotiate lower, for example, lower equity due to sponsorship costs? No, no, because the comp team is non-emotional. The comp team doesn't know you, your background. They know only 3 things. They know your level, they know the position, and they know the location. So they're gonna pay you for the cost of labor in that location, and everything else is irrelevant. They don't care. They are not emotional. Now, they might get emotional when recruiters fight with them, but they're not emotional. Okay, so, just something to note, and you should get paid the same as everybody else. I hope that helps. Haven't heard any audio gaps. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. 2022 was the year of the market transition to the layoffs and current climate that we're in. You could have done exceptionally well, but fell into that time where things changed. 100% agree. So if you're still here, get after it. See if you can use that lead or that apology person or anybody to get back in, because your feedback might be strong. You are welcome. Hey, Jeff, will visa sponsorship affect my chance for the role? Yes. If you are applying from outside of a preferred country and you require sponsorship, anybody who's telling you it won't have an impact, they're wrong. It will. It does. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go after it, though. It just means that sponsorship will be a tougher path. Hey, Jeff, do you have any insights into the levels at LinkedIn versus Google? So the levels at LinkedIn are actually Microsoft levels because Microsoft purchased LinkedIn. So you're talking about instead of like Level 3, level 4, level 5. It's like level 62, level 63, level 64. And what you can start to see is you can start to see some alignment in those levels, but the levels are gonna actually be Microsoft levels. Um, you can go to, like, levels.fyi to learn a little bit more about how Microsoft levels work, and you can kind of match them up. But, yeah, they start kind of in the high 50s, 60s. It's weird. They have their own philosophy, but that's what I would look up. Worked for a year in big tech in a non-tech role. What's the best way into tech in other companies? Well, if you worked at big tech, you wanna leverage your network there. That's my the biggest recommendation I can give you. Um, and you really wanna cater your resume, and you really wanna optimize your LinkedIn profile to show that you worked at one of these companies so that you get people reaching out to you. But I would work the network as much as possible. That's probably gonna be the best way. Yeah. I hope that helps. Can you become an L7 as an IC? 100%. Definitely L7 ICs. Absolutely. Hello. I've been following you recently. Tons of helpful videos. Your content is amazing. Thank you so much for being here. We love the positive feedback, as you know. I appreciate it. Jeff, thanks for continuing to do the lives. Your influence and advice have worked, and I'm excited to see what happens next. We'll keep you posted. No worries. Okay. Yes, no worries, and keep us posted, and definitely just ask on that time, am I putting anything at risk? If we were just to push out 1 more week, I wanna kinda understand my momentum, how things are going, like, they should be pretty transparent with you. Hey, Jeff, Google Recruiter reached out, but couldn't proceed due to hiring. They said I could follow up after returning to the US. How serious are they? Will they continue to consider me in a few months? I mean, I wanna take everything at face value, right? If somebody tells me something, I wanna believe them, right? So and I tend to trust and believe, and so, yeah, if you're back in the US, let them know when you're back there, and if you have a plan to go back to the US, you can say, "Hey, I've set up residence here, I'll be here, I'm just kinda moving around, but let's start the interview process." You don't need to physically be there, as long as you have, again, the appropriate sponsorship or whatever you need that can be whether it's being transferred or whatever it might be, you should be fine. I don't know if that answered the question, but I hope it helps. Just got done with my G and L and L2 networking interview for a DC Tech. Thanks for all your help, bud. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Wish you the best of luck. Come back and let us know what happened. IC to engineering management is a major shift in responsibility, skills, and focus. It's a whole new job, but it's common to see people that accidentally become EM rather than making a deliberate choice. Yes, 100% agree. And those choices are important, and if somebody recommends that we move into a leadership role, strongly consider whether leadership is your preferred path. Will it potentially hold you back a little bit to not be in a leadership type role? Maybe, but you might be a lot happier. So it's definitely an interesting choice. But yeah, a lot of people go from IC to Eng manager or whatever. They go from IC to manager, and it's just pushed because they were a successful IC, not because they'd be a good leader. About leveling at Amazon versus Google, I have an interview for an L3 role, account strategist. I'm an L5 at Amazon. Should I discard the position and push for something more experienced? Good question. It depends. Account strategists typically come in as L3s. Doesn't mean that you don't crush it and come in as an L4. I would just go through the process. It can't hurt you to go through the process. If you're prepared or you're excited, you're gonna show that enthusiasm, um, and see where the comp lands. Sometimes surprisingly, Google can be even competitive with Amazon at an L5. It just so much depends on the location, your current role that you're in, so many factors. I don't have Google Ads experience, though, that's why I considered for an L3 role. Salary is almost 2x than what it's at. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so 80/20 rule. You're going into a job where you don't really understand the product area, I just always recommend the 80/20. 80% of our time is interview prep and practice. Nothing matters if we can't pass the interviews, and then 20% is learning the product area. And with Google Ads, you definitely wanna understand the different types of Google Ads. Why? So you can speak to it in your hypothetical answers. If you're just saying, "Oh, I'd run some ads," or "I'd run midstream YouTube ads," it's like, "Ooh, that's gonna resonate with your audience because they know what that means." So, definitely do your research on Google Ads and definitely go through the process. Even if I'm in the interview process, that will affect my final result due to Vitas's sponsorships at Google. I mean, it shouldn't. If they got you into the interview process, they should be willing to sponsor you. It's kind of how it works. So, it shouldn't they're not gonna say, "Okay, we have Code Z and we have" I'm just gonna use Code Z, that's your name, "Code Z and Sue." Like, let's definitely pick Sue because Code Z requires sponsorship. It shouldn't work like that. It should just be the best candidate. And that's I don't know, my entire time there, that's how it operated at Google. I just hired the best candidate, and I hired plenty of people who required sponsorship. Are you following the hiring trends for AI and ML engineering roles, ML ops, etcetera? What do you think about it? Do you think those roles are better salary-wise? Okay, this is a great question. Um, I think we all know the trends for those roles are they're picking up quite a bit, right? And that's pretty common. It depends on the level of specialization. So if like AI or ML is like a component or a small component of the job, probably not. But if it's more specialized AI ML, then yes, I have seen a differential for that specific skill set. I don't want to tell you too much of the details, but I had a negotiation client where it was a interesting mix of the role in AI, and we definitely saw a significant uptick for that specialization, like probably a good 100 to 150K more than we expected because of that specialization. So the more specialized, yes. Generically, if it's just a smaller part of the role, no. I hope that helps. Thanks, Jeff. Super helpful. Love your channel. Thanks for being here. Hey, Jeff. I'm a Zoogler going through team match calls. I passed the PGM interviews. Awesome. Had 6 match interviews with no match. My next call requires me to do a technical interview for a TPGM. How do I prepare? Okay. So TPM is such an interesting role because technical can mean a lot of things. So sometimes it's like TPM software engineering, which maybe is not you. Just with the assumption if you were a program manager before, probably not in the software engineering space, or you definitely probably would have been a T. Now, the other T is domain specific. So it's a technical domain expertise, but without knowing the specific technical area and your expertise, I don't know that I can thoroughly answer this question. So can you tell me what type of technical role they're looking at for you? That would be really helpful. You are welcome. Okay. So we're going to wait for the follow-up answer on that question. And I'm going to start to slowly ease into my wrap-up phase. This is kind of the length of time we go. We're usually at hour and 15 minutes. This is kind of like the classic amount of time. We usually go 1 hour to an hour and a half. However long the questions come in, I will answer them. But let me just go ahead and prompt on like a little bit of a closeout. And then if you do have any additional questions, please bring them up. Just today, coupon promo code SHS, 20% off of our AI tool and our interview mastery course, getting fantastic feedback on both. I'm still doing one-on-one interview, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions. All of that's available at practiceinterviews.com. We have a free resources page. We have a Slack community with over 4,000 members. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday, new original content every Monday, and then I'm trying to do more short form content. Promise I'll keep at it and keep doing it. All right, coming back to comments. Okay, so no additional comments have come in. Thank you so much. It's September now. We're almost at mid-September. If you're looking for work, it is time to get after it. So get after it. You have a huge opportunity here. Is the market more competitive? Yes. Are there less jobs? Yes. But there's still opportunities out there. And I think there's a little bit of a misconception that January, February, March are pretty big for hiring. They don't tend to be. It's kind of slowly easing into the year. So now's the time if you're looking for a new job. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll be back next week.